You remember the first time you wanted something so badly you could not stop thinking about it. Maybe it was a car. You imagined the way people would look at you when you drove it down the street, the smell of the new leather, the sense of achievement when you finally held the keys. The day you bought it, you felt like you were on top of the world, but only a few weeks later, it was just a car. A tool to get you from one place to another. The excitement faded and the hunger for something else crept back in. Or maybe it was a promotion. You worked late nights, sacrificed weekends, told yourself that once you got that title, everything would feel different. And yes, for a short while it did. You celebrated, your friends congratulated you, your family was proud. But then, almost without noticing, the glow wore off. Soon you found yourself restless again, eyeing the next level, the next raise, the next proof that you were moving forward. This pattern is not rare. It is not even unusual. It is universal. The lottery winner who discovers that a year later, he is no happier than before. The couple who dreams of the perfect house, only to find that once they move in, the house is simply a place to sleep. The student who believes life will start after graduation, only to arrive at the new chapter and feel the same emptiness. We keep chasing a better job, a bigger house, a new relationship, another number in the bank account. And yet, no matter how much we acquire, the satisfaction slips through our fingers. It feels like failure. It feels like something must be wrong with us. We tell ourselves we are ungrateful or greedy or broken. But what if I told you this is not a flaw in your character? What if I told you this is the design of human life itself? 2,000 years ago, Aristotle saw the same truth. He understood that humans would never be fully content with what they already have. He did not call it greed. He did not call it weakness. He called it a signal, a sign that we are built to move towards something greater. Something beyond the next purchase or the next achievement. And here is the unsettling part. This endless dissatisfaction is both the reason we suffer and the reason we have risen higher than any other species on Earth. It is the fire that drives us forward, but also the fire that burns us if we do not learn how to control it. In this video, we are going to explore why human beings are never content with what they have, and why that truth can either trap you in an endless cycle of emptiness or free you to live with deeper purpose. If this is your first time with ThinkMate, let me pause here and explain a concept that sits at the center of this video. Aristotle called it telos. Without it, nothing else we discuss will make sense. Telos means the final purpose, the natural end toward which a thing is directed. Every object, every living being, even every idea, carries within it a built-in destination. For Aristotle, nothing exists without a telos. Think about a knife. Its telos is to cut. If it does not cut, it is not really a knife, no matter how shiny or expensive it might look. Think about the eye. Its telos is to see. When the eye fails to see, it is no longer fulfilling its nature. Or a seed. Buried in the soil, it carries the silent potential to become a tree. The telos of the seed is growth, transformation, unfolding into what it was always meant to be. And what about human beings? What is our telos? Aristotle answered with a word that does not translate neatly into English. He called it eudaimonia. Many people render it as happiness, but happiness is far too shallow. A better translation is human flourishing, the state of living in harmony with our deepest capacities, of realizing the full weight of who we are meant to be. Eudaimonia is not the short thrill of buying a new car or winning a promotion. It is not the temporary spark of pleasure or approval. It is the long arc of a life lived in alignment with our essence. For Aristotle, a person who achieves eudaimonia is not simply satisfied. He is complete. Now, listen carefully. If you often feel restless, if you reach a goal and immediately crave another, this may not mean you are broken. It may mean you are chasing the wrong telos. You are running after shadows instead of substance. A man who spends his life stacking possessions but never asks, what he is for, will always feel the quiet pull of emptiness. But a man who aims his effort toward his true telos will discover that dissatisfaction takes on a different shape. It becomes less of a torment and more of a compass, a signal pointing him toward growth. This is the key. If you are never content, the question is not how to silence that feeling. The question is whether you have misunderstood what it is pointing to. And so before we go further, hold this thought in your mind. Telos is not a luxury, it is not philosophy for the ivory tower. It is the difference between a life that feels like an endless treadmill and a life that feels like a path. One is running without direction. The other is walking toward your reason for being. Now that we have a framework for telos, let us return to the tension you and I both feel. The tension of never being satisfied. Psychologists today have a name for it. They call it the hedonic treadmill. The idea is simple. When you achieve something you want, your happiness spikes, but only for a moment. Soon, you adapt. The new car becomes ordinary. The promotion becomes normal. The relationship that once consumed you settles into routine. You return to the same baseline of discontent, and the treadmill begins again. No matter how fast you run, you never move forward. Take the lottery winner. For a brief period, his life feels transformed. But studies show that within a year, most winners report the same level of happiness as before. Some even feel less satisfied because the rush of sudden wealth fades and the problems it creates remain. Or take the ambitious student who believes life will finally begin after graduation. She crosses the stage, receives the diploma, but within months, the same restlessness returns. The hedonic treadmill is not limited to wealth or career. It appears in relationships, in health, in status. We imagine that the next milestone will deliver lasting contentment, yet as soon as we arrive, the horizon shifts further away. The goalposts move, and we keep chasing. Layered on top of this is another force, one that Aristotle did not name but would have recognized instantly. Social comparison. You do not measure yourself only against your past self. You measure against your neighbor, your colleague, the stranger on your phone screen. Your car feels fine until you see your friend's newer model. Your salary feels adequate until you scroll through someone flaunting more. The treadmill accelerates, powered not just by your desires, but by the constant reminder that others are running faster. This is why no level of achievement ever feels like enough. Because in a world of comparison, there is no finish line. Even the wealthy feel poor next to the richer. Even the famous feel small next to the more famous. Dissatisfaction is baked into the system, reinforced by the very structure of our psychology. And here is the crucial point. This cycle is not an accident. It is not a rare glitch in the human condition. It is the design. Our minds were built to keep us reaching, to keep us moving beyond what we have. That is why you cannot silence the restlessness by adding one more possession, one more achievement. It will not work because the hunger is not meant to end. We are left with a paradox. On one hand, this endless dissatisfaction feels like a curse. It robs us of peace. On the other hand, it has propelled our species to survive, adapt, and create. Without it, we would have stayed in the caves, content with fire and stone tools. With it, we built cities, art, science, and technology. The problem is not that we are never satisfied. The problem is that most of us do not understand what this dissatisfaction is trying to tell us. When most of us feel restless, we assume something is wrong with us. We blame ourselves for being ungrateful or greedy or weak. But Aristotle would tell us something very different. He would say that dissatisfaction is not proof of your failure. It is proof that you are alive and that your life is not yet aligned with its telos. Think again about the examples we used earlier. The man who keeps buying more possessions but never feels whole. From Aristotle's perspective, the problem is not the man's endless craving. The problem is that he has confused material accumulation with his true purpose. His dissatisfaction is not a defect. It is a compass screaming at him that he is walking in the wrong direction. On the other hand, look at someone who is creating, discovering, or serving something larger than himself. A scientist who stays awake long into the night chasing an unanswered question. An artist who never feels her work is finished because she is always pushing toward a vision just out of reach. Do they feel dissatisfaction? Yes, but it is a different kind of dissatisfaction. It does not hollow them out, it propels them forward. This is Aristotle's distinction. Dissatisfaction aimed at the wrong telos is torment. Dissatisfaction aimed at the right telos is growth. One leaves you empty. The other pulls you closer to eudaimonia, to the flourishing that makes life worth living. Aristotle believed that every action should be judged by whether it leads us toward our telos or away from it. If you find yourself restless after buying, consuming, or comparing, that is not a signal to buy more. It is a signal that you have mistaken your purpose. But if you find yourself restless because your vision is still unfinished, your craft still imperfect, your understanding still incomplete, that restlessness is not an enemy. It is a friend guiding you toward a fuller version of yourself. The truth is, you will never reach a point of complete satisfaction, even when you are on the right path. The scientist will never discover every answer. The artist will never paint the perfect canvas. But in pursuing their telos, they find a deeper form of fulfillment, one that does not collapse the moment the novelty wears off. And so Aristotle reframes the very thing we fear. What feels like a curse becomes a signpost. What feels like emptiness becomes direction. Dissatisfaction is not a flaw in human nature. It is the voice of your nature reminding you that you are meant for more than consumption and comparison. This is why the restlessness in your chest will never vanish. Because it was never meant to vanish, it was meant to guide you. Aristotle saw dissatisfaction as a compass, pointing us toward our telos. Centuries later, another thinker pushed the idea even further. Friedrich Nietzsche believed that dissatisfaction is not just a signal, it is the very fuel of life itself. He called it the will to power. For Nietzsche, human beings are not designed simply to survive or even to seek pleasure. At the core of our existence is a drive to expand, to overcome, to assert ourselves, to create and to dominate our limitations. The will to power is not about political control or crushing others. It is about the deep instinct to grow beyond whatever boundary we face. Think about history through this lens. If human beings were satisfied with survival alone, we would still be sitting in caves, content with fire and stone tools. But we were not satisfied. We wanted more. We wanted to shape the land, to tame the animals, to explore the seas. Dissatisfaction drove us to plant crops, to build cities, to invent writing. It drove us to climb mountains, to cross oceans, to split the atom, to reach into space. Every leap forward began with someone who refused to accept the limits of what was given. Someone who felt the sting of dissatisfaction and turned it into creation. The farmer who thought there must be a better way to feed his people. The inventor who believed the candle was not enough. The thinker who challenged the old gods and demanded new truths. This is the will to power at work. But Nietzsche also warned us. The will to power can elevate, but it can also destroy. When directed outward in envy and resentment, it becomes toxic. It makes us tear others down instead of building ourselves up. It traps us in cycles of comparison, bitterness, and shallow victories. But when the will to power is directed inward, when it is harnessed toward creation and self-overcoming, it becomes the force that lifts us above mediocrity. Consider the athlete who is never content with his performance. He pushes past pain, past failure, because the dissatisfaction inside him is not a curse, but a drive. Or the artist who paints and paints, never satisfied, yet producing masterpieces precisely because she refuses to settle. Or the philosopher himself, Nietzsche, who rejected easy answers and forced us to confront truths that were uncomfortable but liberating. This is where Nietzsche meets Aristotle. Dissatisfaction is the compass, yes, but it is also the engine. It points you in the right direction and gives you the energy to move. Without it, there is no growth. With it, there is no guarantee of happiness, but there is the possibility of greatness. So when you feel restless, when you feel that gnawing sense of not enough, you are standing at a crossroads. You can let that energy leak into consumption, comparison, and resentment. Or you can harness it as will to power, using it to overcome your limitations, to grow into a version of yourself you have not yet imagined. Nietzsche would say that life is not about eliminating dissatisfaction. It is about embracing it, riding it, using it as the very proof that you are alive and capable of more. In his view, to be human is to be unfinished, to be constantly in the process of becoming. And the dissatisfaction you feel today is not your enemy. It is the evidence that you are not done yet. Nietzsche believed dissatisfaction was a proof of life, a raw energy that could drive us to overcome ourselves. But in the modern world, that same energy is not left alone. It is harvested, manipulated, and sold back to us. What was once a natural drive has become a marketplace. Consider advertising. At its core, advertising does not sell products. It sells dissatisfaction. It whispers that what you have is not enough, that who you are is not enough, and that relief can be purchased for the right price. A new phone, a new watch, a new car, a new lifestyle. Each one arrives wrapped in the promise that this time, finally, you will feel complete. But of course, you never do. The dissatisfaction returns, and so does the cycle of buying. This is not an accident. Entire industries thrive on keeping you hungry. They know that if you were ever truly satisfied, their business would collapse. So they carefully design images and stories to keep the hunger alive. They make the will to power small, domesticated, channeled not into creation or self-overcoming, but into consumption. And then there is social media. If advertising sells you dissatisfaction, social media feeds it to you every minute of the day. Each scroll is another reminder that someone else is richer, fitter, more successful, more admired. Someone else is traveling the world while you sit at your desk. Someone else is celebrating victories while you wrestle with silence. The platforms do not merely show you life. They show you the curated illusion of lives that seem better than yours, engineered to provoke envy and restlessness. The result is a machine that multiplies dissatisfaction beyond anything Aristotle or Nietzsche could have imagined. Instead of pointing us toward our telos, instead of fueling our will to power in healthy ways, our dissatisfaction is redirected into endless loops of comparison and consumption. We chase likes instead of wisdom, followers instead of virtue, gadgets instead of growth. This is why modern dissatisfaction feels so heavy. It is no longer only the natural signal of an unfinished life. It is a signal amplified, distorted, and monetized. The compass still exists, but its needle has been magnetized by forces outside of you. It no longer points to your telos. It points to the next purchase, the next scroll, the next shallow hit of dopamine. And the most dangerous part is that we accept it as normal. We accept the cycle of craving and spending as the rhythm of life without asking whether it is life at all. We accept the endless comparison as inevitable without realizing it is manufactured. We live inside a system that depends on our restlessness, and we rarely stop to question who benefits from keeping us unsatisfied. So the dissatisfaction you feel is real, but it has been hijacked. It was meant to push you toward growth. Instead, it is used to keep you consuming, scrolling, and chasing shadows. The question now is whether you will continue to feed the system, or whether you will reclaim your dissatisfaction for yourself. If dissatisfaction has been hijacked by the system, then liberation begins when you take it back. You cannot silence the restlessness inside you, but you can decide where to aim it. The question is not how to stop feeling dissatisfied, but how to give your dissatisfaction a worthy target. Look closely at the two paths before you. One is the path of consumption and comparison. On this path, dissatisfaction becomes a trap. You buy more, scroll more, chase more, yet each step only deepens the hunger. It is an endless treadmill with no finish line designed to exhaust you. The other path is the path of telos. On this path, dissatisfaction is not an enemy, but an ally. It urges you to create, to learn, to serve, to grow. It reminds you that you are unfinished, and that being unfinished is not shameful, but beautiful. To be unfinished is to still have room to become. Think of the artist who looks at her painting and feels it is never quite right. That dissatisfaction pushes her to refine, to explore, to reach higher. Or the scientist who feels restless because there are still unanswered questions. That restlessness drives him to discover truths that advance all of humanity. Their dissatisfaction does not vanish, but it transforms. It becomes fuel instead of poison. Even in ordinary life, the same principle holds. The father who feels dissatisfied with how little time he gives his children can let that pain lead him back to what matters. The worker who feels dissatisfied with an empty job can allow that restlessness to push him toward a vocation that speaks to his essence. In each case, the feeling of not enough is the compass pointing to what truly matters. This is why Aristotle and Nietzsche, different as they were, can stand together here. Aristotle gives us the direction, telos, the flourishing we were made for. Nietzsche gives us the energy, the will to power, the drive that turns dissatisfaction into motion. Together they show us that the problem was never dissatisfaction itself. The problem was what we allowed it to serve. You will never eliminate the hunger for more, and you should not want to. That hunger is the reason you are alive, the reason you are capable of more than you are today. The liberation comes when you stop feeding that hunger with empty things and start feeding it with the pursuit of your true purpose. So the next time you feel restless, do not rush to numb it with another purchase, another scroll, another shallow distraction. Ask instead, what is this dissatisfaction pointing me toward? And if you listen closely, it might lead you not to despair, but to the path you were meant to walk. We began with the image of the new car, the promotion, the lottery ticket. We saw how quickly satisfaction fades, how the hunger always returns. Aristotle showed us that this hunger is not a flaw, but a compass pointing us toward our telos. Nietzsche showed us that it is also the fuel, the will to power that drives us to create and to overcome. And we saw how modern systems exploit that hunger, twisting it into cycles of comparison and consumption. Now the choice belongs to you. Will you keep feeding your dissatisfaction to the machine, letting it drain you in pursuit of shadows? Or will you reclaim it, directing it toward the life you were meant to live? Here is the challenge. For the next 7 days, notice every time you feel that sharp pang of not enough. Write it down, be honest. Was it triggered by something real, or was it born of comparison? Was it a signal from your telos, or just a hook planted by the system? At the end of the week, look at your notes. Patterns will appear. You will begin to see where your dissatisfaction is empty and where it is trying to guide you. Because here is the truth. You will never be fully satisfied. But that is not a curse. It is the greatest gift of being human. It means there is always more to reach for, more to build, more to become. You will never be enough. But precisely for that reason, you can always become more. So ask yourself, where will you aim your dissatisfaction? At the empty promises of the world, or at the telos that makes you whole? The answer will shape not just your happiness, but the very meaning of your life. If this video sparked a shift in the way you see things, don't forget to like, subscribe to ThinkMate, And leave a comment so we know this content is helping you, and so we can shape future videos to serve you even better.